Hello friends, it's Dan. Welcome back. Welcome to another plastic miniature review, this time for the HaT Napoleonic British Dragoons, both in light and heavy variants. And I want you to know right away that this is sponsored by HaT. They sent these to me to review with you guys. So as ever, I'm immensely grateful for the support, grateful to get these. This is going to be an unusual review for this channel because these are 25 millimeter plastics. They're also the soft plastic that you may be familiar with if you're accustomed to 1/72nd scale HaT miniatures, but they wanted to send these along. I'm glad they did because I wanted to get some of that soft plastic to compare to some of the hard plastics that we've been looking at from their newer 28 millimeter stuff, and also because they just sent along some plastic 28 mil medieval stuff as well. So I wanted to compare and contrast their 25 and their 28 mil stuff. Again, we mostly focus on 28 mil or 156 scale on this channel, but the point of comparison I think will be very interesting to do. The boxes are classic HaT. You can see they're high gloss, so you have all the reflections of my overhead lights in the background there, but the artwork is lovely as ever. Again, this is classic HaT, a nice illustration on the front of the kind of miniature that's going to be depicted inside. Unusually though, what we're typically used to are kind of like the 3-ups or renders, or just like a simple illustration of typically the poses you would get inside of a HaT box on the back. So if there's 3 or 4 poses, you would see an example of each of those. So if we don't have that on the back of these, and then inside of the box, what you're going to get are 3 copies of each sprue. So what I have here are, on the left hand side are the light Dragoons, and what I have on the right are the heavy. I only have 2 copies of each because I've got a copy of each sprue currently drying, because I had some feedback on my last HaT review that because the plastic is quite shiny, that some people would like to see them spray painted matte, so you can pick out some of those details. So by the time I finish this first part, I think that they will be dry. Hi, future Dan here. I did prime this sprue, however, I found that it's very sticky. This is 24 hours later. And I did some research online, and I found that all you need to do is wash the sprues ahead of time. This is something unique to the soft plastic material, because I did not find this was the case with the hard plastic 28 mil set. But just like with your 1/72nd scale HaT stuff, you want to make sure you wash the sprue in soapy water, let it dry, and then you can prime it without any issue. But remember, 12 miniatures for any box, whichever one you pick up, 3 copies of each sprue. So if you're new here, welcome. What we're going to do is look at one example of each of these sprues. I'll show you the close-ups in detail. I don't really have any way to kit bash these because I don't have much in the way of 25 millimeter stuff in my collection, but I will assemble them so you can see them all built up. I'll do some scale comparisons with some different manufacturers in my collection, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. I'm recording this kind of concurrently with the 28 millimeter cav that they sent me, so these videos are probably going to come out close to back because I wanted these horses to be in the 28 millimeter review, and I wanted the 28 millimeter horses to be in this review. So it's kind of the only way I could think to do it without just making a giant cavalry video, which I thought might be too much. So I guess let's look at the light cavalry first. I'm going to look at the heavy cavalry here. And what I'm going to do is give you a shot of the front and back. And HaT's approach to miniature design, we've talked about in prior reviews, is that they deliberately keep the detail comparatively simple compared to some other manufacturers in exchange for ease of assembly, ease of painting, and affordability is what you get, because most boxes of HaT miniatures, and these are no different, are somewhere around like the $15 price point for 12 miniatures. And again, it's going to vary a little bit depending on where you source them from, but that's true of most of the places I saw online. I'll tell you straight away, I just want you to know this bias, that I'm not a fan of this soft plastic. This is the first soft plastic set that we have seen from HaT. I've dealt with plenty of their like 1/72nd scale stuff. It has the consistency of almost like a gummy candy. I mean, you can't like rip it apart or anything like that, but it is soft. You can see that it can be manipulated, right? And it bends back into place. I think that might be the only thing I can think of that is like a plus to have, because this is clearly a popular enough plastic, because it's not just HaT that uses this soft plastic material. So there must be something I'm missing. The only thing I can think of is that it bounces back. So you're never going to have a situation where like a sword snaps if you were to like hit it while you're gaming. So I can definitely see that as a reason why this is useful. And I suppose if you're not like handling the miniatures, if it's down on a base, you're not going to know one way or another like what material it's made of. But for me personally, just like I said, I'm just used to the harder plastic. I would prefer a harder plastic material. From a detail standpoint, though, let's start with these horses, because again, you're going to get 12 total miniatures, so 3 copies of each horse that you see here. These are very nice from a detailing standpoint. You can see they've got like their kit already on there. The saddles are all done up. And again, these are 25mm in scale. And we'll see exactly how that stacks up with my 28mm stuff here shortly. But I think these are lovely. It looks like there's some loose, what appear to be carbines. Right, there's some like pistols and some hands here. So these are technically multi-part, but not a lot is going to be needed in terms of assembly here. And then, yeah, you can see here, once again, the detailing is really not that shallow considering these are 25mm models. And again, HaT's general design philosophy is to like not go in and like try to individually sculpt like buttons on uniforms because they don't want you to have to paint it. But I think these look lovely. And seem like they're going to be really straightforward to assemble. I think that these carbines just glue into the kind of like holster there on their sash. So again, these are the light Dragoons that we're looking at here. Let's take a look at a copy of the heavy Dragoons here. So I'll do a shot of the front and back as well. You can see it's the same soft plastic consistency. And I'm also going to need help from my Napoleonic gamers here in the comments because I really don't know what the difference is between heavy and light Dragoons other than like maybe equipment, because I don't see any carbines on these guys. Well, I guess I do. Right, there's some carbines here. So like I don't know what the difference is between a heavy and a light Dragoon. Maybe the size of the horse, and they're like used for different roles, like maybe skirmishing and reconnaissance versus like head-on charges in the case of heavy Dragoons. So if you know, please let me know down below so that I can learn. But yeah, it looks like they're unique horse sculpts, and these horses do look a little bit bigger on the heavy. So heavy Dragoons are on the left, light Dragoons on the right. So the horses are a little bit larger. So that could certainly be part of it. And the riders look to be almost the same size. We'll do proper scale comparisons once I put them together, but I'm just kind of experimenting a little bit here. But once again, the detailing on the horses themselves look especially good. I think they're going to paint up nicely. And you got some, saddlebags and various equipment already sculpted onto the horses there, which is nice. Some loose carbines, which can then just be glued on. And then you've got, for riders, a little bit less modularity, or it might be the same amount. Yeah, it looks like there were 2 on the light sprue that had loose arms, and there are 2 on the heavy sprue then, which have loose arms. The only other difference is that the heads are detached on this one, which also look quite nice from a detail standpoint. Right, kind of matching the level of detail that we see, and maybe exceeding it in some cases of some of the 28mm stuff that we've looked at. I'm going to be candid, I'll kind of repeat this at the end of the video too, but these guys have really grown on me, having now put some of them together. This is one of the heavy Dragoons. So again, you got to wash these sprues before you prime them, unlike with the hard plastic that we see with, this is a light Dragoon. I can really only tell the difference from the head and the size of the horse. But I think actually like 25mm seems to be a very nice compromise scale between 1/72 and 1/56 in terms of like the number of miniatures you can get on the table, affordability by extension, but also detail. of the miniatures. Another heavy Dragoon. The pivot attachment point that they use for the heads on the heavy Dragoons works quite well. I think you can make some neat poses out of these guys, despite the fact that 2 of the poses are functionally monopose, other than the head. Let's throw them on the Lazy Susan and see how they scale up. Alright, we've got a kind of silly scale comparison, since this is comparing 25mm models to 28mm models, but as I said, I don't have any other 25mm models, so I can at least show you how these are going to scale up with ones you might have in your collection. So we've got a HaT Light Dragoon there, Fireforge Medieval Knight, Victrix Roman Light Cavalry, Heavy Dragoon. This is a HaT Andalusian Heavy Cav, HaT Heavy Dragoon, Oathmark Elf Cavalry, Firelock Games, Light Dragoon, Victrix Medieval Knight, Wargames Atlantic Medieval Knight, and a HaT Light Dragoon there. So again, despite being 25mm, you can see they still pretty much take up the entirety of that base there and aren't that far off in scale from like the Light Cavalry here from Victrix, or indeed the Heavy Cav from the HaT 28mm range. So I actually am like, I'm kind of being won over by these models on 25mm as a scale in terms of, you know, the amount of detail you can get and the affordability, which would allow for a large number of models for an army. So what's the final verdict? I said in the assembly phase that these guys really won me over. I'm not normally a Napoleonics guy. I don't actually normally like dealing with soft plastic, but the amount of detail that you get on these guys really surprised me, given that this is, again, soft plastic that we're talking about here, and that this is 25mm, right? So it's naturally going to come with less detail than on some of your 28mm stuff. And the thing that really can't be overlooked with any HaT set, but this one in particular, is the price point. As with the Andalusian Cav, I'm seeing some options online for like $9-10, but at a minimum, or like at a maximum, we're talking like $12-15 US for 12 semi-multi-part plastic miniatures. And I think the scale is actually pretty perfect for Napoleonics. It's one that I think is a little bit on the niche side, at least as far as I'm concerned. But I think that if I were going to get into Napoleonics, it probably would be in this 25mm scale, because it blends the gap between the number of models that you're going to need, which would, you know, be conducive to like 1/72 scale conflicts, but the level of detail that I like to see in a miniature like we see in 28mm scale. So definitely something to consider, especially if you are a 25mm Napoleonics player. Look no further for your Dragoons than with this set here. But I think this would even be fun just as like a one-off thing to pick up for a painting project to give to a friend or a hobbyist, something like that. Or if you're trying to like do a foray into a game system, like I was thinking about Sharp Practice or Silver Bayonet, something like that, that you aren't sure you're going to be doing much with yet. This is actually a nice compromise solution for that, because you can get some miniatures for a very reasonable price that are like, they're not like wildly out of scale with 28mm stuff. There's going to be a little bit on the smaller side, but it's going to allow you to amass a good number of miniatures for a very reasonable price. So something to consider. I've got a link down in the description to the HaT site. Massive thanks to HaT for sending these to us. I'll tell you here at the end, if you stuck through it here, that I did find out from them that I've said in prior videos that you can't purchase anything from HaT directly, which is normally true, but there's an asterisk on it, which is that if you can't find a source for any of the sets that you're trying to pick up, you can reach out to HaT, and under that circumstance would be able to purchase from them directly. So just something to be of note. Again, I'll have a link down in the description to the HaT site. Very grateful to all of you for dropping by for this one in the meantime, and until next time, happy gaming.